Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Horizon's Edge. He looked out at the stars through the big window. His crew had been traveling for 3 weeks to reach New Haven Colony. They were supposed to deliver supplies and check on the people there, but something was wrong. Very wrong. "Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her seat at the communications panel, "I'm not getting any signals from New Haven. Nothing at all." Jake frowned. New Haven was home to over 2 million people. The colony had factories, farms, and schools. It was one of humanity's most successful settlements in this part of space. There should be hundreds of radio signals coming from the planet. "Maybe their equipment is broken," said Dr. Paul Bennett, the ship's science officer. He was a thin man with gray hair who studied alien life forms. "We should get closer and take a look." Jake nodded. "Amy, try to contact the defense fleet." New Haven has 30 warships protecting it. Someone should answer. Amy worked at her controls for several minutes. Her face grew more worried with each passing second. "Captain, I'm not finding any ships at all. The defense fleet ... It's just gone." "That's impossible," said Communications Officer Lisa Grant. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair. 30 ships don't just disappear. Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He had been a ship captain for 15 years. He had seen pirates, equipment failures, and natural disasters. But he had never seen anything like this. "Take us into the system," he ordered, "but keep our weapons ready." The Horizon's Edge moved forward through space. As they got closer to New Haven, Jake could see that something terrible had happened. Where the planet's cities should have been glowing with lights, it was only darkness. "Oh my God," whispered Amy. She was looking at her scanner readings. "Captain, the cities are gone. All of them." Jake walked over to look at her screen. The scanner showed the planet's surface, but instead of the familiar pattern of New Haven settlements, there were only black craters. Miles and miles of destruction covered what used to be humanity's proudest colony. "What could do this?" asked Paul. His voice was shaking. "I don't know," Jake said quietly, but he was starting to have a very bad feeling about the answer. They found the remains of the defense fleet floating in space near the planet. The 30 human warships had been torn apart like toys. Pieces of metal and plastic drifted everywhere. There were no survivors. "Look at this damage," said Lisa. She was studying the wreckage through the ship's cameras. "These ships were hit by some kind of energy weapon, but it's not like anything we've ever seen." Jake ordered Amy to take a team down to the planet's surface. They put on their spacesuits and flew down in a small shuttle. When they came back 3 hours later, Amy's face was white with shock. "Captain," she said in a quiet voice, "there's nobody alive down there. Nobody at all. The buildings are melted. The ground is turned to glass in some places. And there are these strange crystal things everywhere." She held up a small piece of blue crystal that seemed to glow with its own light. Paul took it carefully and studied it under his microscope. "This isn't made from anything on Earth," Paul said after a while. "It's not made from anything human at all. This came from somewhere else. From someone else." The crew of the Horizon's Edge worked for 2 days, searching through the ruins of New Haven. They found no survivors. They found no clues about who had done this terrible thing. But they did find more of the strange crystals and burn marks. That showed energy weapons far more powerful than anything humans had built. On the 3rd day, Lisa made a discovery that changed everything. She was going through the wreckage of the Defense Fleet's command ship when she found a damaged computer. Most of the data was destroyed, but she managed to recover a few seconds of video from the ship's cameras. "Captain, you need to see this," Lisa said. Her hands were shaking as she played the video on the main screen. The video showed space around New Haven just before the attack. Everything looked normal. The defense ships were in their usual positions. The planet glowed peacefully in the distance. Then, without any warning, huge ships appeared out of nowhere. They were unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The alien ships were made of the same blue crystal material they had found on the planet. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The video showed the human defense ships trying to fight back. But their weapons did nothing to the crystal ships. The alien weapons, however, cut through human armor like it was paper. In less than 10 minutes, all 30 human ships were destroyed. The video ended there, but Jake had seen enough. "We need to get this information back to Earth immediately," he said. "Humanity needs to know what happened here." As the Horizon's Edge prepared to leave the dead system, Jake sent an encrypted message toward Earth. It would take weeks for the message to reach the home planet, but every word was important. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Exploration. Vessel Horizon's Edge. New Haven Colony has been completely destroyed by unknown hostile forces. All 2.3 million colonists are dead. The defense fleet has been eliminated. We have evidence of alien technology far superior to our own. Humanity is not alone in the universe, and we are not safe. Requesting immediate military support and evacuation of all Outer Rim colonies." End message. Jake looked back at the dead planet one last time as his ship jumped to hyperspace. Someone had murdered over 2 million innocent people. Someone with technology that made human weapons look like children's toys. But Jake Morrison didn't know that this attack was just the beginning. He didn't know that the aliens who destroyed New Haven thought humans were weak and helpless. He didn't know that they were planning to wipe out every human settlement in the galaxy. Most importantly, he didn't know that humanity had been preparing for this day for decades. Hidden shipyards across dozens of star systems had been building the largest war fleet in galactic history. 700,000 human warships were waiting for the order to launch. The aliens thought they were hunting helpless prey. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Susan Carter was drinking coffee in her office deep inside Luna Command when the message arrived. Luna Command was built inside the moon, hidden from anyone who might want to attack Earth. It was the secret heart of humanity's real military. Susan had gray hair and tired eyes. She had been preparing for this day for 20 years, but she had hoped it would never come. A message from Captain Morrison played on her computer screen. As she watched the video of the alien ships destroying New Haven, Susan felt her heart grow cold. Over 2 million people dead. An entire colony wiped out like it never existed. She pressed a red button on her desk. Alarms began ringing throughout Luna Command. Within minutes, President William Harris appeared on her video screen. He was in the White House, looking worried and confused. "Susan, what's happening?" the president asked. "My security team says there's been some kind of attack." "Mr. President, we need to activate the Genesis Protocol immediately," Susan said. "New Haven is gone, all of it. We're at war with an alien species." President Harris was quiet for a long moment. He was a good man, but he didn't know about humanity's hidden preparations. Very few people did. "I'm calling an emergency meeting," he said finally. "Get to Washington as fast as you can." 2 hours later, Susan sat in a secret room deep under the White House. Around the table were the most important military leaders in human space. General Frank Davis, the head of Earth's armies. Dr. Helen Brooks, who ran the secret research projects. And a dozen others who had spent their lives preparing for this moment. President Harris looked around the room with worried eyes. "Tell me everything," he said. Susan stood up and activated a hologram projector. The image of New Haven's destruction filled the air above the table. Everyone watched in silence as the alien ships tore apart the human defense fleet. "Gentlemen, ladies," Susan said quietly, "this is what we've been preparing for. The aliens who did this have technology that's far ahead of ours in some ways. Their energy weapons can cut through our best armor. Their ships can appear and disappear without warning. General Davis leaned forward. How many ships do they have? What are we dealing with? We don't know yet, Susan admitted. But based on how easily they destroyed 30 of our warships, we have to assume they have hundreds, maybe thousands of vessels. Dr. Helen Brooks cleared her throat. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had worked on humanity's most secret projects for decades. Mr. President, it's time to tell you about what we've really been building. She pressed a button, and the hologram changed. Now it showed star maps with hundreds of small dots scattered across dozens of solar systems. For the past 30 years, we've been building automated shipyards in secret locations throughout human space, Helen said. Each shipyard has been working day and night, building warships using designs that the public has never seen. President Harris stared at the map. How many ships are we talking about? 700,000, Mr. President. Helen said calmly. The room went completely quiet. Even Susan, who knew about the project, felt her breath catch. 700,000 warships was more than most people thought existed in the entire galaxy. That's impossible, whispered General Davis. The shipyards are completely automated, Helen continued. Robot workers, artificial intelligence systems, automated mining operations. We've been building a fleet that could fight a war against the entire galaxy if necessary. President Harris rubbed his forehead. Why wasn't I told about this? Because we hoped we'd never need it, Susan said. Every president for the past 30 years has known that this project existed, but the details were kept secret in case of spies or security leaks. Susan activated another hologram. This one showed a massive warship, sleek and deadly looking. This is the new Vengeance-class battleship. Each one is 3 times larger than our current ships. They carry fusion torpedoes, particle beam weapons, and something we call quantum disruptors. What's a quantum disruptor? Asked the president. Dr. Brooks smiled grimly. It's a weapon that can tear apart the bonds between atoms. Nothing can defend against it. Not armor, not energy shields, nothing. Commander Steve Parker, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. He was a young officer who had been chosen to lead one of the new fleets. Ma'am, how quickly can we get these ships ready for combat? They're already ready, Susan said. Every ship has been built, armed, and supplied. All they need are crews. And we've been training people for that too. She showed them another image. This one was of massive training facilities on Mars, Europa, and the asteroid belt. Thousands of people in military uniforms were practicing with equipment that looked far more advanced than anything the public knew about. We have 3 million trained crew members ready to man these ships, Susan continued. Most of them think they've been training for asteroid mining or deep space exploration. They don't know they're about to become the largest military force in human history. President Harris was quiet for a long time, thinking about everything he had heard. Finally, he looked up at Susan. Admiral Carter, I'm giving you complete command of this operation. Do whatever you think is necessary to protect humanity. Susan nodded. Thank you, Mr. President. General Davis, I need you to start calling up our reserves. Every person who has ever served in the military needs to report for duty immediately. Over the next 24 hours, something incredible happened across human space. On Earth, Mars, Europa, Titan, and hundreds of smaller colonies, people received messages on their phones and computers. The messages were simple. Report to your nearest military base immediately. Humanity needs you. Colonel Nancy White was in charge of organizing the biggest military mobilization in human history. She worked from a command center that had been built in secret under the Rocky Mountains. Screens around her showed the locations of every human military base, every reserve unit, every person who had ever worn a uniform. Ma'am, said one of her assistants, We're getting response rates of over 90%. People are leaving their jobs, their families, everything. They're coming. Nancy nodded. She had expected this. When humanity was threatened, humans always came together. Commander Steve Parker stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Iron Thunder. It was one of the most powerful warships ever built by human hands. Around him, his crew was learning to use equipment that was decades ahead of anything they had trained on. "Captain," said his weapons officer, a young woman named Lieutenant Sandra Lewis, "these quantum disruptors are incredible. The test shots we fired completely destroyed those asteroids. There wasn't even dust left." Steve looked out at the space around them. He could see dozens of other new warships, all of them getting ready for battle. In the distance, automated factories were still working, building even more ships. "How many ships are ready to fight right now?" he asked his communications officer. 100,000 ships are fully crewed and armed, sir. Another 100,000 will be ready within the week. Steve felt a mixture of pride and fear. Pride at what humanity had accomplished in secret. Fear of what they were about to face. Admiral Susan Carter stood in the main command center of Luna Command, watching reports come in from across human space. Her hidden fleets were awakening, like a sleeping giant opening its eyes. "Admiral," said her aide, "the first battle group is ready to depart. 100,000 ships under the command of Admiral Richard Stone." Susan nodded. "Tell Admiral Stone to follow the alien trail. Find out where they came from. And if he encounters any hostile forces." She paused, thinking about the 2 million dead people of New Haven. "Yes, Mom?" "Tell him to show them what happens when someone attacks humanity." As the first 100,000 human warships began their journey toward alien space, their combined engine burns lit up the night sky on Earth. People in cities around the world looked up and saw new stars being born. They didn't know it yet, but they were watching the beginning of the largest war in galactic history. The aliens who had destroyed New Haven thought humans were weak and helpless. They were about to learn the most important lesson in the galaxy. Never underestimate a species that has spent 30 years preparing for war. Fleet Admiral Richard Stone commanded the largest military force in human history from the bridge of his flagship, the Terra's Fury. The massive ship was 5 miles long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Around it, 99,000 other human warships moved through space in perfect formation. Richard was 55 years old and had spent his entire life in the military. He had fought pirates, stopped rebellions, and kept peace in the outer colonies. But he had never imagined anything like this. "Admiral," said Commander Lisa Turner, his tactical officer. She was a smart woman who could track thousands of ships at once using the advanced computers. "We're following the alien trail through hyperspace. The energy signatures are getting stronger." Richard nodded and looked at the main screen. It showed a map of local space with the path the aliens had taken when they left New Haven. The trail led deeper into unexplored territory, toward stars that humans had never visited. "How long until we reach their next target?" Richard asked. "Based on their current speed, about 6 hours," Lisa replied. "But Admiral, there's something else. We're picking up more energy signatures. I think they've attacked other places too." Richard felt his jaw tighten. More attacks meant more dead humans. "Show me." The screen changed to show 3 different star systems. Each one had the same energy signatures they had found at New Haven. Each one was showing signs of complete destruction. "Send reconnaissance teams to all 3 systems," Richard ordered. "I want to know what happened there." Captain Danny Miller led the first reconnaissance squadron. His ship, the Swift Hunter, was built for speed and stealth. It could get in and out of dangerous areas without being detected. Danny was 32 years old and had been chosen for this mission because he was one of the best pilots in the human fleet. The first system Danny's team investigated was called Hope's End. It had been a small mining colony with about 50,000 people. When Danny's ships arrived, they found the same terrible scene they had seen at New Haven. The cities were destroyed, the defense ships were wrecked, and strange blue crystals were scattered everywhere. "Captain," said his science officer, "I'm finding the same alien technology here, but there's something different. The attack happened 3 weeks ago, before New Haven was destroyed." Danny understood immediately. "They've been hunting us for weeks. New Haven wasn't their first target." The second system, called Bright Star, had been home to 800,000 people. It was completely dead. The third system, New Frontier, had housed 1.2 million colonists. Also completely destroyed. In total, the aliens had killed over 4 million humans in their attacks. When Danny reported back to Admiral Stone, the entire command crew was silent. 4 million people murdered by an enemy they knew nothing about. "Admiral," said Lysa Turner quietly, "we're receiving a message. It's coming from deeper in space, along the alien trail." "Put it on screen," Richard ordered. The screen filled with an image of a creature that was clearly not human. It looked somewhat like a tall, thin person, but its skin was blue-gray and seemed to glow with its own light. Its eyes were large and completely black. When it spoke, its voice was translated by the computer into English. "I am War Leader Zefkar of the Hegemony," the alien said. "You primitive creatures have been judged unworthy of existence. Your colonies have been cleansed, and your home world will follow. Do not attempt to resist. Your species lacks the power to oppose us." The message ended there. Richard was quiet for a moment. Then he started to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had just heard something incredibly stupid. "Commander Turner," he said, "send a message back to that alien." "What should I tell him, sir?" Richard smiled grimly. "Tell War Leader Zethkar that he has made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Tell him that humanity is coming, and we're bringing friends." While Admiral Stone's main fleet continued following the alien trail, smaller groups of human ships spread out to search other star systems. Lieutenant Colonel Sandra Lewis led one of these search groups. She commanded 50 warships, including her flagship, the Righteous Anger. Sandra was 40 years old and had grown up on New Haven before joining the military. When she heard that her home colony had been destroyed, she volunteered immediately for the most dangerous missions. 3 days after Admiral Stone received the alien message, Sandra's group encountered their first living enemies. They were investigating a star system that had no human colonies when Sandra's sensors detected 12 alien ships hiding behind a large asteroid. "Battle stations," Sandra ordered calmly. "All ships, prepare for combat." The alien ships were beautiful in a deadly way. They were made of the same blue crystal material that had been found at the destroyed colonies. They seemed to glow with their own inner light, and they moved through space without any visible engines. "Colonel," said her weapons officer, "the aliens are powering up their energy weapons. Same type that destroyed our colonies." "Fire quantum disruptors," Sandra ordered. "All ships, maximum power." The human ships opened fire with weapons that had never been used in real combat. The quantum disruptors created beams of pure destructive energy that could tear apart anything they touched. The alien ships tried to defend themselves with energy shields, the same shields that had made them nearly invincible against the colony defense fleets. But the quantum disruptors went right through the shields like they weren't there. In 30 seconds, all 12 alien ships were completely destroyed. There wasn't even wreckage left behind. "My God," whispered Sandra's tactical officer. "Our weapons work. They actually work." Sandra allowed herself a small smile. "Send a message to Admiral Stone. Tell him the aliens can be killed." Dr. Karen Johnson was aboard the research vessel Discovery's Edge, studying pieces of alien technology that had been recovered from the destroyed ships. Karen was one of humanity's best scientists, and she had been chosen to figure out how alien technology worked. "This is incredible," she said to her assistant as she examined a piece of alien crystal under a powerful microscope. "Their ships aren't built the way ours are. They're grown like living things." Her assistant, a young man named Marcus Campbell, was monitoring alien communications. "Doctor, I'm picking up alien radio transmissions. They're talking about the battle Colonel Lewis just fought. What are they saying?" Marcus looked worried. "They're surprised that we were able to destroy their ships. They keep using a word that translates to impossible. I think they didn't expect us to have weapons that could hurt them." Karen nodded. "That makes sense. They probably thought we were helpless after they destroyed our colonies so easily. They didn't know about our hidden fleet. Doctor, there's something else. I'm tracking their communications back to their source. I think I know where their home base is." Karen looked up from her microscope. "Show me." Marcus brought up a star map on his computer. "The signals are coming from here," he said, pointing to a star system about 6 jumps away from their current position. "It's a system with 7 planets. The signals are strongest from the 4th planet." Karen studied the map. "Send this information to Admiral Stone immediately. If we know where they're based, we can end this war quickly." Back on the Terra's Fury, Admiral Stone received Karen's report with satisfaction. Finally, they had a target. "Commander Turner," he said, "send a message to all human fleets. Tell them we've found the enemy's home system." "What are your orders, sir?" Richard looked out at the stars, thinking about the 4 million humans who had been murdered by the aliens. He thought about families torn apart, children who would never grow up, dreams that would never be fulfilled. "Tell all fleet commanders to converge on the alien home system," he said quietly. "We're going to show the hegemony what happens when someone attacks humanity." Within hours, human fleets from across the galaxy began moving toward the same destination. Admiral Stone's 100,000 ships were joined by Admiral Patricia Evans' fleet from the core worlds. Admiral Kenneth Scott brought ships from the Outer Rim. Captain Angela Price led the heavy assault fleet with humanity's most powerful weapons. In total, nearly 400,000 human warships were converging on the hegemony home system. It was the largest military force that had ever been assembled in galactic history. War leader Zethkar, sitting in his command ship above the hegemony capital world, watched his sensors with growing alarm. The primitive humans who should have been easily destroyed were bringing a fleet larger than anything the hegemony had ever seen. "How many ships do these creatures have?" he asked his tactical officer. "We count nearly 400,000 vessels, war leader, and they're all armed with weapons that can penetrate our shields." Zethkar felt something he had never experienced before in his 300 years of life. He felt fear. "Send messages to all hegemony worlds," he ordered. "Tell them to prepare for war. These humans are not the weak prey we thought they were." But it was too late. The humans were coming, and they were bringing the largest fleet of warships the galaxy had ever seen. The hegemony was about to learn that some prey fights back. War leader Zethkar stood on the command bridge of his flagship above the fortress world of Kethmer. For 3,000 years, the hegemony had ruled this part of the galaxy. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved dozens of species. They had never faced a real challenge. Until now. "War leader," said his communications officer, her voice shaking with fear. "The human fleet has arrived at the edge of our system." Zethkar looked at the main display screen. What he saw there made his blood run cold. The humans had brought 400,000 warships. Each ship was larger and more heavily armed than anything the hegemony had built. They stretched across space like a metal wall of death. "How is this possible?" Zethkar whispered. "These creatures were supposed to be primitives. They barely had space travel when we first found them." His tactical officer, a nervous young soldier named Vextal, studied the sensor readings. "War leader, their technology is different from what we expected. These ships are using weapons we've never seen before. And their numbers ... We estimate they have more warships than our entire empire combined." Zethkar felt something he had never experienced in his long life. For the first time, he was truly afraid. Admiral Richard Stone stood on the bridge of the Terra's Fury as his massive fleet, prepared for battle. Around him, his officers worked calmly and efficiently. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. "Admiral," said Commander Lisa Turner, "we have visual contact with the alien home system. There are 7 planets, just like Dr. Johnson predicted. The 4th planet appears to be their capital world." Richard studied the tactical display. The alien system was heavily defended. There were space stations, orbital weapons platforms, and at least 50,000 hegemony warships spread throughout the system. "It's not enough," Richard said quietly. "They might have ruled this galaxy for thousands of years, but they've never faced humans before." He pressed a button on his command chair. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Stone. We're going to split into 7 battle groups and attack simultaneously. I want every alien military target destroyed, but protect any civilian populations. We're here to stop the killing, not start more of it." The human fleet split into 7 massive groups, each one larger than any military force the hegemony had ever assembled. Admiral Patricia Evans took her ships toward the outer planets. Admiral Kenneth Scott headed for the alien shipyards. Captain Angela Price led the assault on the heavily defended capital world. The battle began when the first human ships entered the system's inner zones. The hegemony defense platforms opened fire with their energy weapons, the same weapons that had easily destroyed the human colonies. But these human ships were different. They had armor that could absorb energy blasts, shields that could deflect particle beams, and weapons that could tear through anything the aliens built. Captain Angela Price commanded the dreadnought Humanity's Hammer as it led the assault on the hegemony's primary orbital shipyard. The shipyard was massive, bigger than most moons, and protected by thousands of automated defense systems. "All weapons fire," Angela ordered. The Humanity's Hammer and 50 other human dreadnoughts opened fire with quantum disruptors. The alien shipyard, which had been building warships for over 1,000 years, began to tear apart under the assault. Sections that had taken decades to build were destroyed in seconds. "Captain," said her weapons officer, "the alien defenses aren't even slowing us down. Our weapons are going right through their shields like they're not there." Angela watched as the alien shipyard continued to break apart. Pieces of metal and crystal fell toward the planet below like burning stars. "Good. Make sure every construction facility is destroyed. I don't want them building any more ships." Meanwhile, Admiral Kenneth Scott was leading his fleet against the hegemony's client species. These were races that had been conquered by the hegemony centuries ago and forced to serve as soldiers and workers. "Admiral," said his communications officer, "we're receiving surrender signals from the client species fleets. They're asking for mercy." Kenneth nodded. This was what he had hoped for. "Tell them that if they stand down and don't fire on human ships, they will be treated as prisoners of war according to human military law. We're not here to punish species that were forced to fight." One by one, the client species fleets began surrendering. They had been slaves to the hegemony for so long that they had forgotten what freedom looked like. The humans were offering them something the hegemony never had, a chance to live free. Commander Robert Taylor was put in charge of managing the alien prisoners. He set up detention camps on uninhabited moons where the prisoners were given food, medical care, and fair treatment. Many of the aliens had never been treated with kindness by their military leaders. "Sir," said one of his assistants, "the prisoners are asking questions about human society. They want to know how we treat our own soldiers and civilians." Robert smiled. "Tell them the truth. Tell them that in human society, everyone has rights and freedoms. Tell them that we don't believe in slavery or conquest." Back on Earth, the hegemony had tried one desperate counterattack. They sent their fastest ships to attack humanity's home world, hoping to force the human fleet to retreat. It was a catastrophic mistake. Admiral Grace Cooper commanded Earth's home defense fleet. She had 200,000 ships stationed throughout the solar system, hidden and waiting for exactly this kind of attack. When the hegemony strike force arrived, they found themselves facing odds of 1,000 to 1. The battle lasted less than an hour. Every single alien ship was destroyed without causing any damage to human installations. "Send a message to Admiral Stone," Grace ordered after the battle was over. "Tell him that Earth is secure and the aliens' last desperate attack has failed." War Leader. Seth Carr watched his empire crumble from his command ship. In just 3 days, the humans had destroyed 1,000 years of hegemony military buildup. Their shipyards were gone, their defense fleets were destroyed, and their client species were surrendering in massive numbers. "War Leader," said Vextal desperately, "perhaps we should consider surrender terms. The humans have shown mercy to our client species. Maybe they would be willing to negotiate." Zethkar looked around at his command bridge. Half of his officers were dead or wounded. His ship had been damaged by human weapons, and he could see human fleets surrounding his position on all sides. "No," he said finally. "The hegemony does not surrender. We have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. We will not bow to these primitive creatures." But even as he spoke the words, Zethkar knew it was over. The humans had technology that was superior to anything the hegemony had built. They had more ships than the hegemony could count. And most importantly, they had something the hegemony had never possessed. They fought not for conquest, but to protect innocent life. Admiral Stone received reports from all 7 battle groups. The results were the same everywhere. Complete human victory. The hegemony's military power had been broken in less than a week. "Admiral," said Commander Turner, "we're receiving communication requests from hegemony worlds throughout their empire. They want to discuss surrender terms." Richard nodded. "Tell them we'll accept nothing less than unconditional surrender. All hegemony military forces must stand down immediately. All client species must be given their freedom. And War Leader, Sethkar must be handed over to face justice for the murder of 4 million humans." Throughout hegemony space, alien worlds began broadcasting surrender offers. They had seen what happened to their military forces. They had seen human mercy toward prisoners and civilians. Most importantly, they had seen that the humans could not be defeated in battle. The client species were the first to officially surrender. Representatives from dozens of races that had been enslaved by the hegemony came forward to offer their services to the human fleet. They brought with them knowledge of hegemony technology, star charts of unexplored space, and information about other threats in the galaxy. Dr. Karen Johnson was amazed by what she learned from the surrendering aliens. "Admiral," she reported to Richard Stone, "these client species have been forced to serve the hegemony for centuries. They have technologies that complement our own perfectly. If we work together, we could explore parts of the galaxy that neither humans nor hegemony forces have ever seen." Captain Danny Miller, who had led the first reconnaissance missions, was now working with alien pilots who had been forced to serve the hegemony. "Sir," he reported, "some of these aliens are incredible. Pilots and navigators. They know parts of space that aren't on any of our maps. With their help, we could prevent other species from making the same mistake the hegemony made. As the war came to an end, Admiral Stone prepared for the final confrontation with war leader Zethkar. The hegemony commander was trapped in orbit, around his home world, surrounded by human ships, with nowhere to run. War leader Zethkar, Richard broadcast on all frequencies, this is Admiral Stone of the human fleet. Your empire is finished. Your military is destroyed. Your people are surrendering. You have one choice left. Surrender now and face trial for your crimes, or be destroyed where you sit. For a long moment, there was silence. Then Zethkar's reply came across the radio. I am war leader of the hegemony. I do not surrender to primitive species. Then you've made your choice, Richard said quietly. 6 months after the destruction of New Haven, Admiral Richard Stone stood on the bridge of what used to be war leader Zethkar's flagship. The alien ship had been repaired by human engineers and now flew human colors. It served as a symbol of humanity's victory over the hegemony. The war was over. The hegemony had surrendered completely, and their former empire was now under human protection. What had once been the most feared military force in the galaxy was now just a memory. Admiral, said Commander Lisa Turner, we're receiving the final surrender documents from the last hegemony world. That makes all 847 former hegemony planets now under human administration. Richard nodded as he looked out at the space around the former hegemony capital world. Where once there had been weapons platforms and military stations, there were now human ships keeping the peace. The change was remarkable. President William Harris had created something called the Terran Protectorate to manage all the former hegemony territory. It was the largest government in galactic history, covering thousands of star systems and hundreds of different species. The man chosen to run this new empire was Captain Jake Morrison, the same officer who had discovered the ruins of New Haven. He had been promoted to Fleet Admiral and given the job of making sure that what happened to New Haven never happened again. Jake stood in his new office on the space station that orbited the former hegemony capital. Through his window, he could see ships from dozens of different species working together. Humans worked alongside aliens who had once been slaves of the hegemony. Former enemies were becoming allies. Admiral Morrison, said his aide, a young woman named Lieutenant Carol Peterson. The representatives from the Veltar species are here to see you. They want to join the human fleet. Jake smiled. The Veltar had been one of the hegemony's most important client species. They were excellent engineers and had helped design many of the hegemony's most advanced ships. Now they wanted to use their skills to help humanity explore the galaxy. Send them in, Jake said. The Veltar delegation was led by a tall, thin alien with blue skin and 4 arms. Her name was Engineer Prime Zalvin, and she had been building starships for over 200 years. Admiral Morrison, Zalvin said in carefully pronounced English. My people wish to offer our services to the Terran Protectorate. We have knowledge of shipbuilding techniques that could make your vessels even more powerful. Jake had been expecting this offer. In the months since the war ended, dozens of alien species had volunteered to help humanity. They brought new technologies, new ideas, and new perspectives that made the human fleet stronger than ever. We would be honored to have your people join us, Jake said. But I want to make something clear. In the human fleet, everyone is treated equally. There are no slaves, no conquered peoples. Everyone who serves does so by choice. Zalvin's eyes widened. In all her years serving the hegemony, she had never heard a leader speak like this. You mean, we would be partners, not servants? Partners, Jake confirmed. Your people would have the same rights and responsibilities as any human crew member. Dr. Helen Brooks was working in her new laboratory on Luna, studying alien technology. That had been shared by the former hegemony client species. The advances in human technology were incredible. In just 6 months, human ships had become faster, stronger, and more efficient than ever before. The hegemony had some impressive technology, she told her assistant as she studied an alien faster-than-light communication device. But they never shared it with their client species. They kept all the best technology for themselves. Her assistant, Dr. Paul Bennett, who had transferred from Captain Morrison's old ship, nodded. That was their biggest mistake. If they had treated their subjects as equals instead of slaves, they might have been strong enough to fight us. Helen activated the alien communication device. Instantly, she was connected to human ships thousands of light years away. The signal was clear and fast, much better than human communication technology. With this technology, she said excitedly, we can coordinate fleets across the entire galaxy in real time. No enemy will ever be able to surprise us the way the hegemony surprised New Haven. Captain Amy Rodriguez, who had led the first survey team to New Haven's ruins, now commanded a mixed human-alien exploration fleet. Her ship, the New Havens, Memory, carried a crew of humans and aliens working together to explore unknown parts of the galaxy. Captain, said her navigation officer, a 4-armed Veltar named Zixnal, we're approaching the edge of known space. Our sensors are detecting star systems that aren't on any of our maps. Amy looked at the main screen, which showed stars that no human or alien had ever visited. This was why she had joined the exploration service. There were still mysteries in the galaxy, still new worlds to discover. Take us into the first system, she ordered. Let's see what's out there. As the New Haven's memory moved deeper into unexplored space, Amy thought about how much had changed since the war. The galaxy was a different place now. Instead of the hegemony's empire of fear and slavery, there was the Terran Protectorate's alliance of free peoples. But Amy and her crew carried an important message as they explored. Any species they met would learn that humanity protected those who could not protect themselves. But they would also learn that humanity would show no mercy to anyone who tried to hurt innocent people. Back in the former hegemony capital system, construction ships were building something incredible. Where New Haven Colony had once stood, a new settlement was taking shape. It was called New Haven II, and it was going to be bigger and better than the original. The new colony was built with the best technology from dozens of different species. It had defense systems that could stop any attack, communication networks. That connected it to every human world, and living spaces designed for both humans and aliens. In the center of the new colony, a massive memorial wall listed the names of every person who had died in the original New Haven attack. 2.3 million names were carved into black stone, each one representing a life that had been cut short by hegemony cruelty. Admiral Susan Carter, who now commanded all human military forces in the galaxy, stood before the memorial wall with tears in her eyes. She had known some of the people whose names were carved there, friends, colleagues, family members. They didn't die for nothing, she said quietly to Admiral Stone, who stood beside her. Their deaths showed us what we were really fighting for. Richard nodded. The hegemony thought they were just destroying a minor human colony. They didn't know they were starting the largest war in galactic history. Above them, the massive human fleet maintained its eternal watch. 700,000 warships were spread across the galaxy, protecting thousands of worlds and billions of people. Never again would any species be able to attack innocent civilians without facing the full might of human military power. President Harris visited New Haven II for its official opening ceremony. He stood before a crowd of humans and aliens, all of them citizens of the new Terran Protectorate. 6 months ago, he said, the hegemony destroyed the original New Haven because they thought humans were weak. They thought we would accept their attacks and do nothing. They were wrong. The crowd cheered as human and alien ships flew overhead in formation. The display showed the unity that had replaced the hegemony's rule of fear. Today, we dedicate this new colony not just to the memory of those we lost, but to the future we're building together. A future where no one has to fear attack simply because they are different. A future where all species can live in peace and freedom. As the ceremony ended, children from dozens of different species played together in the colony's parks. Human. Children ran alongside young aliens, all of them growing up in a galaxy where cooperation had replaced conquest. Captain Jake Morrison, now Fleet Admiral Morrison, watched the children play and smiled. This was what they had really been fighting for. Not just to defeat the hegemony, but to build something better in its place. His aide, Lieutenant Carol Peterson, approached with a report. Admiral, our long-range scouts have detected signs of another hostile species about 50,000 light-years from here. They appear to be attacking primitive civilizations. Jake's smile faded. There were still predators in the galaxy. Still, species that thought they could prey on the weak and helpless. Send word to all fleet commanders, he said. We have work to do. As the human fleet prepared for its next mission, the memorial wall on New Haven 2 caught the light of the system's star. The names of 2.3 million people glowed in the sunlight, a reminder of the price of peace and the cost of freedom. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity would protect the innocent and punish the guilty. The age of conquest and slavery was over. The age of cooperation and freedom had begun, and in the deep darkness between the stars, 700,000 human warships continued their watch, ready to face any threat that dared to challenge the peace they had fought so hard to create.